On this episode of AV Week, how 4K and 8K displays are driving distribution, experience in the AV industry, and the place of interactivity in digital signage. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 411, recorded Friday, July 5th, 2019. Experiential Expectations.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
And by Vadio, a leading manufacturer of professional PTZ cameras, Pro AV solutions, and UCC integration systems.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, Ms. Lainey Materis from Sapphire Marketing. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello.
Also,
how's everybody doing?
Good, very good. It's technically, we're recording this on Friday the 5th, so I appreciate my two American friends for at least, doing work on what can be sometimes a weird 4-day weekend, sometimes not. The other American is Mr. George Tucker. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.
And I mentioned my two American friends because we actually have a European UK friend on us, Mr. Clive Caldwell from AV Magazine. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon from sunny Croydon. I have no idea what I am at the moment, but it's Friday afternoon and we're all on our last legs. But it's absolute joy to be with you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. One of my favorite big dumb American memes from yesterday was a meme of George Washington telling all of the his English friends to enjoy working on the 4th because there's nothing to anybody else except for us big dumb Americans. So, all right.
Well, could I just stop you there? I can't let that go away.
Right.
I'm going to really screw up your timing now. Just say that who's speaking the same language. So we always say, no, they didn't win the war because they're speaking English, and that's where I choose to leave it. Thank you very much.
That your point well made. Although I would argue that a lot of us don't speak it well. So
Samuel Clemens had to say, we're two people separated by the common language.
That's right.
Yes, indeed.
They're still up. Well, we are in Croydon.
I'll let you hang on to that. All right, our first story comes to us from AV Network and the friends over at SCN. Over 233 million 4K TVs are to be shipped by 2024 with 8K on the horizon. This is a report out of from AVI Research. Quote unquote, flat panel TV makers including Samsung, Sony, LG, and TCL announced the introduction of 8K flat panel TV models that are priced between $5,000 US and $70,000 depending on the display size. This all while they are ramping up production and shipping of 4K TVs. Mr. Tucker, I'm going to start with you on this. You and I have had conversations for the last 8 years when it comes to resolutions, and more pixels is great, more resolutions is great. But where is the content, right? And that's been one of the constant conversations you and I keep having. So, as the rise of 8K continues to become a reality, and these manufacturers are pushing 4K, from a shipping and a marketing standpoint, where are we when it comes to getting these signals? And I don't care if you want to talk about 8K or 4K here, because I would argue that we're still in a deficit of content and transport, at least a stable transport when it comes to 4K and 8K both. So where are we?
Well, I would love to say that the reports are good, but I don't know if they really can truly be considered the content is good. Look, from a digital signage or a commercial installation side, the argument has always been 8K or 4K. Does it matter until you're really close up? As you said, more resolution's always better. You have more to play with. You have more headroom. So there's stuff you can do that can make the final image or presentation look better because you have that bandwidth or overhead. But I still don't see a lot out there. from the fact that we don't have a lot of content that can be delivered. A lot of these networks, especially on digital signage, from my side of the world, you don't have the networks or the backbone that I can deliver that content remotely. Right? So if I'm dealing with digital signages and it's at 4K and I need to update that stuff, I still don't have a lot of infrastructure that can let me stream that content effectively. I mean, how many gigabits per second do you need 4K or 8K, right? I mean, 8K is...
Well, 4K is
it's out there.
And a half. So 8K, and I'm just doing quick math here, 32, 35?
I think it's something in that range, yeah. And that's for a per unit issue. So, multiply that on your network and the bandwidth usage needed. And that's where we're going because, 4K is great. If we were still in an era of John Siaka and his love of his streaming optical media, and I think that's the very first time I've ever said his name right on air. So thank you. Don't tell me I said it wrong because it'll depress me to no end. But if you had your disc and you had your physical media, it's right there. You have your HDMI, you can do it. But we're not in that anymore. Everything is IT. Everything is going over the network. And if I can't get that bandwidth on a decent resolution without cutting it down to 411 or something silly like that, what use of it is it to me? Even in home, I'm going to be streaming that content anyway. I'm not really going to have a physical disc. So yay for 8K, but it doesn't matter unless I'm close up. And I really don't want to pay someone to go have to load material onto 1,000 different signage areas just because I want that resolution. It's going to be good enough. And where am I going to go with that? And I don't have any content to do anyway. What do I have? Stuff from the Japan Olympics? I mean, where am I going to get 8K content or even 4K content at this point?
Yeah. Lainey, same kind of question. Where are we when it comes to, like George said, content and also delivery?
Right.
Obviously, we've got display because these are the folks that are driving that. From my perspective, there might be some content creators out there that are pushing. And the 2020 Olympics, George mentions the fact that NRK is pushing that. NRK is the national broadcaster for Japan. 2020 Olympics are in Japan. They're pushing the 8K content for that. But beyond those folks, where are we when it comes to getting the content and making this a reality?
I think I agree with George. I don't see the content, but if you think about 4K and where we came from, 1080p, and then we went to 4K, and now everybody says, okay, 8K is the next big thing. But if price was equal, right? How many end users are actually asking for 8K? Not many end users at all. So the consumer market may drive the 8K displays being out there, but I don't see 8K being something that's going to be scalable immediately from a price point standpoint and from a bandwidth standpoint. Like George said, we have to plan for new encoders, new decoders. So I'd like to see content catch up, and I'd like to see the price of 8K come down. Where I see 8K working out is in interactive displays, because I think the larger the interactive displays get, the closer you're going to be to the content on those displays. And I think 8K would be something that would make that content pop. So that's my thoughts.
That's a really good point. Clive, when it comes to both George and Lainey mentioned this, when it comes to the resolution, one of the things that is a concern is the bandwidth. Not for nothing, but there are already existing wars that go on every single trade show. Folks who are that their version of AV over IP, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but their version of AV over is the best, right? And they're using 4K a lot of times as kind of that marker because they can do they can do 4K here. But now we're talking about 8K. Is that push going to make that argument null and void because none of them can do 8K yet? Or is it going to push the manufacturers to do something better, faster, stronger, more quickly because, folks are might be asking for 8K?
Well, you have to turn it back a bit, really. It's nothing to do with any of that. The manufacturer will go on developing the latest bells and whistles regardless of what the market wants or is able to supply. We're talking about 8K since 2014. All I care about, really, and distribution should have been whacked by now. We should be in a better position to distribute large volumes of data wherever we are. And it's taken us years to really get to the point. We always come out with these arguments. As an end user, I want to see the best image in front of me. I'm very happy with a high dynamic rate 4K screen, thank you very much. I want to see the best I can of that content, and an 8K will give me a wonderfully clear image and an incredibly immersive experience on a huge television. And then that's what I want to see. Now, I then have to take back and say, well, I'd like to have that stream, thank you. If I'm then going to watching huge films on my home television, or making big demonstrations in a corporate or event environment, this is what I want to do. And why can't this network supply it for me? Do I have to create something that's customized? So I don't think we should be talking about general networks. I think you saw with Panasonic, it was had a camera IC with its own screen and God knows what else, was selling what was a mini ecosystem for you to create your own content and put it on their own kit and present it in your own environment. It was doing it to a retail audience. It's coming from a different viewpoint. I don't see why we are always having these conversations about distribution difficulties or whatever it is down that bandwidth pipe. We should have cracked it by now. I'm talking probably to someone is oversimplifying the problem, but we always have this difficulty, don't we? We should have got it cracked by now.
But yet we don't, and that's the thing.
Well, this is the fault with industry, isn't it? Is it in his interest to do it? Because it's not in his interest to keep saying we've got this, that, and the other. There's no one buying it. It's very expensive. I know for a fact, having gone over to the International Olympic Committee and seeing what they're doing, NHK and BBC being one for 2012 Olympics, they are trying to film their stock in the highest possible resolution because they realise that their earlier stock, compared to some of the early turn of the century early century film produced stuff, which was very, very high quality, wasn't up to the range. And they decided a couple of years ago to be the highest possible quality. That was 8K. I think it'll be shooting up higher probably, to put it into their vault so that when a medium is then available for it to be played decently on television or other medium, it will be there for it to be sold. So it's building up its stock quite nicely. I was over there and it was a Lausanne, I think it was, and we were talking through all this, and it was there for that's just the other side of it. So I think people are using it, but they're stuffing it away. There is content, but it's not on general release. But what's going to drive it's the streaming pressures probably. People are going to have to rethink their networks and how to disseminate information, generally speaking. So why are we still having distribution problems? So you create a bigger pipe. What's the problem? We're doing for cable and other means. When I was doing satellite television, we were distributing in 1990 massive. We had our own transponders. We launched our satellite from Cape Canaveral, and we were doing television programs and distributing big data, financial data, to banks through transponders. And that was a massive amount of information. Now, we could do it then. Why the hell can't we do it now?
Mm-hmm. But it's not like you can just order a bigger internet or a bigger network off the shelf.
Well, that was the equivalent of our internet then,
Well, isn't part of the problem that we're going with good enough at this point? Our networks are often good enough because that's a budgetary concern. What is one of the first things that seems to go in the design of a building from the ground up, or even a multi-dwelling unit that's being renovated for luxury? Certain things go away very quickly. Is it a demarc for all the fiber coming in? Well, that's too expensive. We're going to run it this way. And demarcs are not expensive, but I've watched it happen. So on a simple terms, you're doing a good enough network that's not going to be ready for this new technology, and that's going to push it back because that's what we're depending upon now. I don't think anyone ever saw that coming when 10, 15 years ago we thought we're going to put these networks in and there'll be something greater and cheaper. And it's not, maybe it's greater, but it's not cheaper. And nobody wants to spend the money. I think that's part of why am I spending so much for category 6 cable or category whatever they think it is, when they're okay to buy $70,000 displays, but they don't think about the infrastructure and they just want to go with the minimum they can buy. And I've seen it too many times in both commercial and residential install stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And Clive corrected me. I said NRK was the
NHK.
It's NHK for Japan. NRK is actually the national broadcaster for Norway. And don't ask me why I know that. Our next story comes from commercial integrator and Julian. I just lost his name, Julian Phillips. Julian is a board member of AVWeek, writes about the kind of the name change from Infocom, the organization, to AVWeek a couple of years ago. AVWeek, the Audiovisual Experience Association. One thing that he writes, and it's an interesting question, and actually I'm just going to ask kind of what he asked in there to each of you. he said, the quote unquote, we talk boldly about experience and the role that this amazing community plays in creating compelling and engaging experiences in all shapes of business and walks of life. He then goes on to say, are we really kind of taking AVIXA at their challenge of being an experience community, being an experience industry? Lainey, I'll start with you on this. Are we as an industry taking AVIXA up on that challenge of being experience creators?
I think some people are, and I think some people aren't. I think, you know, if you walked around Infocom's show floor, I saw a lot of black boxes. I saw a lot of LED product. I just saw product. I saw less about an experience, like walking into an immersive environment, you know, the classroom of the future, or the conference room of the future, or the huddle room of the future. So I think from that aspect, from the end user perspective, if I was an end user walking around, I saw very little experience for my kind of, you know, workforce, whether it's a classroom or a corporation. I think integration firms are still not selling the experience level. I think there's some, you know, like the Diversifies and the Whitlocks and the EVI SPLs. I think they're doing a good job building experiences, but I think some of the middlemen, the smaller, medium-sized integrators, or might not be pitching the experiences that well, and I think we're losing out on that. So no, I don't think we're doing a best job, according to AVIXA, of building experiences for our clients.
Mm-hmm. Clive, you were with me in Fairfax when they made the announcement to the press, and then later on today to the rest of the industry. From that, that Dave Labuscas put together, and also a couple other folks spoke that day. Do you think that we've kind of risen to that challenge the last year and a half?
No. Just by saying it doesn't make it happen, of course.
Yes.
It must seem I'm in some sort of controversial mood today. I'm not. It's not because I'm in Croydon either. But no, it's a tough one. The main reason is people need help. You know, funny you should say, timing-wise, we've had a lot of events from the AV Awards. We've had a lot of people entering our events we don't normally do, and a lot of them have been creating experience type of effects around what they've been doing. That's really been increased, and that's been quite noticeable. I feel quite sorry for the industry, and I can see it from AVIXA's point of view, but I can also see it from the industry's point of view. Maybe by saying that people need help. There needs to be this in-between point which acts as a guide to helping the industry deliver these experiences that are currently really only being created at vast expense by the big creative agencies. And listening to Mary at ESI Design at Tide, she went some way towards helping people think about how they could do that, and articulated it, I think, quite well. Just sort of sitting down and starting to evaluate where your skills are, what your traditional approaches have been, and what resources you need to do. It takes a different mindset to get yourself into that mode of delivering what you would call an experience. And I think the integrated community, even though it does what it does well, I think this is a new market for them. They are, I think, incidentally going through their own changes, regardless of experience, which they have to sort out themselves. That's got nothing to do with AVIXA. Yeah. You know, they're having to cope with a market that's changing very rapidly. They're trying to go global and change their business models. They're looking to refinance themselves and rethink how they present themselves on the various stages they're operating in. But as far as experience is concerned, I mean, AVIXA needs to do, in my view, two things, and I hate to be controversial, but I will be doing, is it needs to sit out and promote the industry more about what it's doing, because we need the right skills in. If we're going to create experience, we need a much broader set of skills to come in and help us produce those. And they are currently not appearing, and we have a major problem on our hands. We can't just magic these things out of the air. You also got to examine your existing business model, how geared up it is to produce this stuff and deliver it effectively, and what relationship you have with the customers. So those are two big things I see potentially as difficulties. But it was good for AVIXA to say that. It needed to. It also needs to, I think, probably engage new generation, because over here, you know, we've got a problem with the younger generation not knowing what AV is, let alone how to create an experience. They're going into I went down to Bournemouth University, and they got a massive computer animation division, which is partly AV, and they supply probably a quarter of Hollywood with all its animation people. And they are not, I would say, connecting with the traditional role of AV. They call it creative engineering. So they're producing these various people are not thinking, I must get a job and go into the AV industry and join some of these integrators or other companies to produce this stuff. And that is the great talent you sort of need to bring in and work, because they are thinking of engineering, but they're also thinking of the artistic side of the tools and creativity that you need to blend the two together to create what I would call an experience. Although, depending on what you say, anybody opening a product and putting it on a wall is an experience. It depends how you define what it is.
Well, and George, actually, Clive just kind of made a reference to one of your favorite people to bang or business models to beat up on, and that's the hang and bangs, right? Mm-hmm. This is not the experience, not just going in and throwing up a display and going, ta-da! You have it. How do we do this?
Well, I mean, back to the question for a minute of, are we experiential? I mean, what AV is, an AV integrator is experiential. We're creating an experience, whether that's subtle or dramatic. We're creating an experience, whether that's a conference room that sounds great and everybody can hear each other, or whether it's the home theater system for a luxury home that envelops you and makes it like a theater, right? So we've always been about experience. What we haven't been about is really interfacing on that technical level in our little sanctuary called the trade show or our industry with the end users, i.e. nowadays the IT managers or the creative engineering types who don't have that historical idea that we have in all of our hearts of, say, the hi-fi system with the components. You pick the best parts from the best stuff and make the best signal. That stuff is all pretty much gone now, unless you're just going to be some kind of, extraordinary person. I'm looking for a better word, but I can't. Extraordinary aesthetic. But nobody wants that aesthetic at this point. What they want is the experience of it, delivering them content at the quality they want within the environment they want. Yeah. And we have to learn to adapt into the sense of, we're going to create for you the best sound. That may be just a couple of black boxes. Sorry, Lainey, I know we want less black boxes, but that's what they are, right? We're having to be able to say, this is the room. We need to be involved at the time that the architect is building it. I know this is a long-standing argument, right? Because architects don't want things on the walls. They don't want bumps. They want those aesthetics. I really come from the sense of, guys, let's do the best aesthetic. Now, hang and bang, I hate as a business model, but if you're doing it right and your experience is, I'm hanging at so your kids can climb like monkeys over it, because sometimes they do in a playroom, that's an experience because you're trusted and you created an experience that system will not fail. Right? I mean, and it's true. I mean, I can't tell you how many houses I've done where there's a 50-inch LED LCD screen in the playroom, and right next to it are little ladders that the kids climb up and down. And of course, what are they going to hang on? They're going to hang on that thing, right? But that's a side point. But one of the things in this article that really struck me was him saying, quote, their IT managers are looking for bundle packages. This is something akin to us hearing for years, programmable without a programmer. And he even mentions that in the article. This is the world we're in. We want to protect those things because our experience is that's creative. It's tactile to us. We're building that, but we need to let go of that. There'll be a place for some of that, but man, a lot of it is not necessary. The technology is integrated. The technology is bundled together already. We need to make those things work the best and then upsell the experience of keeping it modern, of keeping it interactive, and keeping new versions of it or other rooms added. That's our role these days. We're not selling hi-fi gear and we're not selling the best vacuum tube amplifier. It just isn't going to happen.
Yeah. All right. On last story here comes to us from our friends at AV Magazine and Clive. The world's largest touchscreen video wall goes live. It's 100 million pixel, 20 meter long video wall. It's powered by Displax, DISPLAX, ultra large touch screens. Clive, I want to start with you on this. This is not just a gorgeous piece of display. It's also an interactive display and an interactive digital signage, which is kind of where I want to go with this. Where do we think the place for interactivity is in the world of digital signage today?
Well, that's a loaded question. I really don't know. But yeah, I do apologize for the superlative. They make great headlines and it makes people read them. Oh. But, there are a lot of these sort of stories coming out at the moment with these super big amazing screen environments that are engaging people. And I think it's there, so why not use it? A lot of things are made of interactivity with digital sign. It's like everything else. You need to use it like a scalpel. It's a tool that you need to use carefully. Not everything needs to be interactive, and you need to strategically think which elements within the environment you're creating is interactive. It needs to fit into a good story, a customer journey, all that sort of stuff. So it's not everything needs to be interactive. And I think if you look at these sort of screens, they're designed to be almost town hall, front of house, massive reception, impactful. They could be in museums, information dissemination, various other things, where instead of individual play, you've got a presence, other people taking part in what is a communal activity. You see at eBay, don't you, where people popping in to see what's going on, multiple people playing. Now the quality and how that's delivered and the technology used has to get slicker and better and so on. So you're going to get some wow stuff in there and so and everything else. But I think that's a different thing to interactivity generally for digital signage. That's a much more, if you're doing it right, especially I suppose I'm looking at it from a retail perspective, you need to have the whole process thought through properly so that only the key points that you need to have interactive are interactive, not. I'm speaking here as a journalist rather than an integrator myself, obviously. But I think it's a much more sophisticated story. The technology may be there, but you need to use it very carefully.
George, where do we see this? Clive mentioned retail. There are other verticals that we could see, making sure that the interactivity is part of at least some of the design consideration before deploying it, in an install.
Can you rephrase that question? I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, so Clive mentioned retail. Are there other verticals like education or hospitality where we can see interactivity being used as a scalpel, as a tool in some of the design, when they're talking about the design, and then further on down the road, making sure that interactivity gets made part of the actual install.
Yeah, I mean, part of my concern about that is that we do interactivity and then we add it on like so many features that nobody wants sometimes. In certain worlds, look, there was the whole thing we saw a couple of years ago at ISE where they had the ability to give you maps and locations and track you and add those kind of features to interactivity. I'm here. How do I get to that store? I'm here. How do I do that? The article mentions from the manufacturer about collaboration with science and stuff. And I don't know if that seems to be an application of, hey, look, they can all talk to each other in the same room and pull up pictures. And I don't know, maybe I'm not a scientist and that kind of workflow should work for them, but it doesn't seem to me like that is. So what's the purpose of it? Does it contribute to the workflow? And does it contribute to my experience in getting around a facility? Can I see my flight? Can I touch it? We have here in New York City touchscreens in the subway system. They've stood up remarkably. I'm quite impressed that they haven't been just completely kiboshed and vandalized, but they stand up. And they are helpful because I can find out the information I want. Right? Now, it's not multi-touch, and I got a very limited, but that purpose is what it's for. And this is great. I mean, it goes, 20 meters, this thing? And then one of the videos shows somebody sprinting across it and how long it takes them to go across the entire length of this thing. And that's wonderful. But that seems to me like a one-time use. The World's Fair, as it were, the Olympics, or some mega maybe the Mall of America could use it because it's so big and that would be the same thing. But remarkable technology, very interesting. But I think we sometimes overuse that frictionless, glossy touchscreen interface because we can. And as the old adage goes, should we? Just because we can?
All right, lady, you'll have to find a word on this. Where should we be putting interactivity when it comes to displays?
Well, I'm all for interactivity, but I think that, again, going back to the content has to be robust enough to keep the attention span of whoever is interacting with it. But when you go to a retail environment, like Clive was saying, you're competing with something that's in your hand all the time. Everybody's face is down in their cell phone. So if I'm putting an investment into, say I'm a financial institution or I'm a retail store, and I want to get people's face off the screen of their phone and onto what I'm selling in my store, then I better have some compelling way of technology and content to get them to touch that screen and interact and get, some viable screen time. So I think in retail, it would be great if it was done right. In the corporate environment, I think that if you're selling any kind of service, and you have an interactive touch table where instead of, again, being on your cell phone and enter your own little microcosm of a world, you can explore the different services that institution has. I think that's a win-win. But again, content is king there. And, you know, the touch technology has to be spot on, because my phone, the touch technology is great. The minute I go to a touch table and I don't have that same fluid experience, then I don't think I'm going to be touching that table again.
Yeah.
And then in higher education, I think that it could be a great group study tool where I'm throwing some content on that's, you know, my homework or my thesis, and I want some people to interact with that. I think it would be great in the school environment. But again, you know, the cost has to come down. The technology cost for that interactiveness has to come down substantially to make it economical for university to do that widespread and not have a one-off room. So I'm all for interactivity as long as the technology cost is down and the content's wonderful.
All right.
And the technology's spot on, like a cell phone.
Yeah, absolutely. That actually is a good, really good place to stop. Thank you all so much. Mr. Clive Caldwell, thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you or AV Magazine?
It's been a pleasure. Twitter at AVMag, online avinteractive.com. It's probably the best two ways of doing it. Thank you so much.
All right, sir. Thank you. Ms. Lainey Materas from Sapphire. How do people get a hold of you or Sapphire Marketing?
So you can reach me at Sapphire Marketing at sapphiremarketing.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place. So if you find my cell phone number, just text me and I'll respond.
Mr. Tucker, sir, thank you as always. How do people get a hold of you?
Thank you, sir. Good to talk with you guys again this week. So at Tucker2s is my main portal on Twitter. Keep an eye on that for some other stuff coming out, hopefully late summer, early fall, some more content and new things. Hopefully we'll be even talking more.
Alrighty. For me, for Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website if you would, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. While you're there, please check out our supporters section. These are the folks who help us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and Infocom coverage, and in about 2 to 3 months' time, CEDIA coverage. So we thank them for their support. We also have a new webinar coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks on control systems, automation, and APIs. So check that out as well. All that and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.